the Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
Welcome to the Instructor Podcast. This is the show that helps you become an even more awesome driving instructor and potentially even run a better driving school. As always, I am your wonderful host, Terry Cook. I'm delighted to be here, but even more delighted that you have chosen to listen, because we are continuing along with Season 7, and we are continuing with the theme of road safety. And Season 7 is also sponsored by Bright Coaching. And for the latest information and news from Bright Coaching, check out www.brightcoaching.net. But as I mentioned, we are continuing with this theme of road safety, and today is a very important episode. I am joined by Sharon Huddleston of Caitlin's campaign, and we are talking everything that graduated driving licenses and more, including some quite startling statistics. But we do start off by talking about the reason behind Caitlin's campaign, which was that Sharon's daughter Caitlin tragically lost her life in a collision back in 2017. So we do cover sort of some sensitive areas around this, but it's a really, really powerful and important episode. So I'm sure you'll gain from it, and if you're anything like me, you'll be affected by it as well. So without further ado, let's get stuck in, and I'll catch you at the end of the show. So today on the Instructor Podcast, I am joined by Sharon Huddleston. How are we doing, Sharon?
I'm all right, thank you, Terry. Thank you for asking.
No, I'm delighted to have you on today. Not necessarily delighted for the reason, but delighted to have you on because we're going to be talking a lot today about Caitlin's campaign, which is all around graduated driving licenses and making roads safer. But I think it's probably best to start at the beginning and look at the reason why that campaign came about. So do you want to share with us, what happened to your daughter Caitlin?
Yeah, well, in July 2017, Caitlin and her friends had organised to go out for an evening meal. And I got home that evening and Caitlin was getting ready to go out for an evening meal, and she came down the stairs and she asked me to fasten the buttons on her blouse for her at the back of her neck. And she went back upstairs and carried on getting ready. And then her friend came to pick her up. And her friend had passed her test 4 months previously. And when she came in to pick Caitlin up, I asked, was she on her own? And she said no, there was another friend in the car as well that she was taking to the restaurant. So I shouted Caitlin down the stairs, and fortunately, just before she left, she turned to me and she asked, do I look all right, Mum? And I said yes. And then she left the house, and I just remember seeing the back of her head, her long dark hair, as she shut the door as she left. And then unfortunately, 15 minutes into the journey to the restaurant, the driver had lost control on a bend in the road, and it was a rural road as we're from Cumbria. And as she'd entered the bend, she'd lost control and she wasn't speeding. And unfortunately, the car spun onto the opposite side of the road, directly in front of a van travelling in the opposite direction. And where Caitlin was sitting in the front passenger seat, the van impacted the car, and Caitlin was killed on impact, as was the driver as well. And the backseat passenger was seriously injured, and the van driver was too. All the girls were 18 at the time of the crash. And as I say, the driver was just 4 months into driving. And at the inquest into the crash, which was 14 months later, we found out that it was really down to inexperience of the newly qualified driver. Previous to that, I'd found out through Break, the road safety charity, about a law that exists in other countries. And I read about this on the Break, the road safety charity's website, as just weeks after we lost Caitlin. I didn't seem to be receiving any help from anywhere. And so I contacted Break. Now, every family that loses a family member in a road crash receives a booklet from the police, and this is from Break, the road safety charity. And it's kind of a guide of what happens after you've lost somebody in a horrific road traffic collision. And I was desperate. I'd needed to reach out to somebody that would understand how I was feeling. And so I contacted Break. And as I say, through them, I then found out about this law that existed in other countries called a graduated driving license. And from that, I suddenly realised that if we'd had this law in the UK, this crash wouldn't have happened. Caitlin and her friend wouldn't have been killed. Because newly qualified drivers in other countries, once they've passed their test, have certain safety precautions put in place that kind of protects them while they're in their most inexperienced phase of driving, just after passing the test. And one element that really struck out to me of a graduated driving license was that when teenagers are newly qualified, they can't, for up to 6 to 12 months maybe, carry peer age passengers in the car with them, so friends who are similar age to them. And through reading that, I realised that Caitlin could still be alive, or would still be alive, if we had that law in this country. And the driver would be alive too, because she wouldn't have made that journey that night with her friends in the car. And that's a heartbreaking thing, to find out that there is a law that could have saved my daughter's life and her friend's life, and this tragedy wouldn't have affected those 4 families that were involved in that crash that night. And this is the thing, through one crash, there was 4 families affected, 2 bereaved, devastated and bereaved, losing children, and 2 others, learning to live with disabilities. And from that, finding out about graduated driving licence, I spoke with Break about it and found out that I could ask the coroner for a preventing future deaths report. This is Regulation 28 report, it's called. But what it means is that the coroner would write a report recommending what I put to him, a graduated driving licence being in the UK, as it would prevent future deaths from happening in the circumstances how Caitlin and her friend were killed. And we were very fortunate, and the coroner completely agreed with me and wrote the Preventing Future Deaths report to the Department for Transport, recommending that a GDL was implemented in the UK to stop future deaths from happening in these circumstances. And that was such a relief that he agreed with us. And he himself said that when his children had passed their test, he said that was one rule that he said to them, that they were not going to carry their friends in the car with them for a while after they'd passed their test. And so that's how it all came about, through how we'd lost Caitlin, how Caitlin was killed, and getting in touch with Break, the road safety charity, finding out about this law that existed, getting the coroner's back in, which was fantastic. The only thing is, with a coroner, he can't tell the Department for Transport what they have to bring in as law. He can only recommend. But it was great. It was great for us to get that Preventing Future Deaths report. And then from then, I went on to start campaigning for this law. and researching about graduated driving licence. And then on what would have been Caitlin's 20th birthday on the 23rd of November 2018, we decided to then launch Caitlin's campaign for a graduated driving licence. And since then, I've been campaigning in her memory and to save other teenagers' lives on the roads in the UK through this law.
I mean, I definitely want to talk some more around Caitlin's campaign and the graduated driving license as well. But I mean, firstly, I know this was in 2017, but please, allow me to share my sympathies and condolences, and I'm sure that all the listeners will as well. I think I've had Rebecca Morris on the podcast recently, a road piece. I know that you're familiar and friendly with Rebecca. And something we touched on there is that we don't worry about this. We don't concern ourselves with this. And I'm sure I read somewhere that you've said before that you weren't necessarily worried about the driving aspect. You will worry about as kids being attacked, or we worry about, illness and stuff like that. But it's kind of that part of the reason you're doing this as well, so that other people can see this is a danger. And like you said, to prevent it happening again, hopefully.
Yeah, that's right. I think as well, what my aim is to make parents and teenagers aware, parents of teenagers, because I was unaware of all the dangers that evening. I didn't realise that, the main cause of death in 17 to 24-year-olds was road traffic collisions. I didn't realise that most young driver deaths occurred on rural roads either. Because I'd worried about Caitlin a couple of months before she was killed. She was going to Manchester Airport and the girls shared a car going to Manchester Airport, a different group of girls. And I worried about that journey on a motorway because I was under the misconception, I suppose, about motorways. I thought they were the most dangerous roads. And unfortunately, I found out too late for my daughter that it's rural roads where young driver crashes occur. So yes, my aim now is to raise awareness, to make parents know the dangers and teenagers too.
I mean, there's still that misconception, if you like. You pass your test and you're done. And I think that's why I'm a big fan of what you're doing. We don't like the reason why you're doing it, but obviously it's the fact you're doing it, I think, is incredible. And we do need to support this. We do need to campaign for this. I think just before we move on to that, I would just like to ask you, I mean, I mentioned this to you before, and I'd like to ask you and give you the opportunity just to tell us a little bit about Caitlin.
Yeah, well, Caitlin was a very... she wasn't a confident girl. She was a very quietly spoken girl, and such a thoughtful, sweet-natured girl as well. She was very much a homebody and still wanted to go anywhere with me and her dad still. Just a few months beforehand, we'd been invited to her friend's 21st and she came with us, and she still wanted to go away with us on holidays. She was still at that age. And I think with Caitlin as well, because she was my youngest child of 3, I tried to keep her the baby of the family. We thought of Caitlin as the baby of the family kind of thing. And also with Caitlin, she was born with hemiplegia. So she had a weakness down one side. And so she was very clingy with me, or very close to me, because of this weakness in her right side. When we did go out for meals or anything, she sometimes struggled cutting food, two-handed activities. And so she was always by my side in case she needed me to help with anything. Do you know what I mean? So I think through that slight disability that she had, and being the youngest child as well, we kind of kept her a very young 18. But in saying that, she had a very wise head on her shoulders, actually, and she was a bit of an old soul with her music choice as well, because she loved music, and she absolutely loved Fleetwood Mac, and kind of the groups that me and her dad kind of liked in our when we were younger, and yeah, she had posters on her bedroom wall with Fleetwood Mac and David Bowie, and she loved 80s music. So yeah, she was like I say, a very thoughtful, sweet girl who, and me and her were very close. And yeah. Mm.
I mean, I've seen the article in First Car, and some of the other stuff you've done, and just the picture, big, beautiful, smiley face. It's lovely, and yeah, it's again, it's something I was talking a little bit about to Rebecca Morris. For being completely honest, I haven't had this experience. I've not lost anyone in a crash, and I think because of that, I've been able to distance myself from it quite well. But recently, I looked on the Roadways website, saw their memorial, and it kind of hit home a little bit. And then getting more involved in this sector and speaking to more people like yourself, it's like you disassociate from it when it's not you. And were you almost a bit like that before this, and now you would kind of feel that, if you like?
Yeah, yeah, I was exactly like that, and all of us feel like that about Caitlin. Caitlin and car crash don't go together. That's how we feel, because Caitlin couldn't drive herself. She just applied for a provisional license, because of her slight disability. That was in the doctor's hands at the time, actually, when she was killed. So yeah, you do think, oh, that kind of thing happens to other people, kind of thing. But we now know that it can happen to anybody. And as I said, the girls weren't doing anything wrong. They were just girls going out for an evening meal. There was no drugs, alcohol, or speeding involved, no mobile use involved. It was purely down to inexperience. And that's one thing that I would like to get across, because a lot of people think, oh, well, I must have been doing something wrong, kind of thing. And a lot of crashes, it's not that. Young crashes isn't that. It is inexperience. And that is why, as I say, we need some safety precautions in place for them to keep them safe on our roads. And I don't think people realise as well that, as I say, like I didn't, that this is the main cause of death in our younger generation, and it's a bigger killer than drugs and knife and gun crime, and that's what I need to get out to let people be aware of. Because, as I say, I wasn't aware of it. And I know that, if that law had been in place, the girls would have just asked for a lift from their dads.
Yeah.
One parent would have taken them. It needn't have happened.
I mean, it's the message we need to get across, because even if we've got a government that isn't acting and isn't, enforcing this law, we can still get the message out there. So let's talk a little bit more about that then. But I want to start off actually because, we've swapped some messages and we've spoke a little bit recently, and what's it's almost put a little smile on my face is the names you've been mentioning to me. And they're all people that have been really helpful to me in what I'm doing as well. And so since coming into this road safety bubble, if you like, it's just been so warm and friendly and helpful. And I'm keen to know, is that what you found over the last few years?
Yeah. Since I started looking into graduated driving license, or we're now using the word kind of phase licensing or progressive licensing. In other countries, it's called graduated driving license, but in our country, we could call it a progressive licensing if we wanted to. But once I'd started researching it in other countries, I wanted to know more and more about it. And so I reached out to many people. And since then, as I said, Brake have been absolutely fantastic with me, and Road Peace as well. They are very supportive. And if anybody has sadly lost a family member through a road traffic collision, do not hesitate and get in touch with them, because they are so warm and welcoming and will look after you. But I also then reached out to researchers, and I now think of them as like friends, and I have online meetings with them. And so, yeah, Elizabeth Box from the RAC has been great, a great support to me, and has helped me with a lot of my research. And Sean Helmond from Transport Research Laboratory, Neil Kinnear, there's so many, and Dr. Sarah Jones from Wales as well. They've all been absolutely fantastic with me. And now I think of them all as my friends.
Yeah, and now you're giving me a list of names to get on the show as well, so that's good.
No.
But I know before we were talking a little bit about the graduated driving license, and you mentioned to me about some of the misconceptions around it. So do you want to? Because I do think, sorry, I'm interrupting myself here, because I do think there's a block there by a lot of the public that just see it as almost like an infringement on their rights. They don't look into it. They just see it, well, this is going to be harder for me. And even with parents sometimes that don't realize the dangers, as you mentioned, that might look at it and think, well, I want my son to, because I've had this before, I want my son to pass so that he can drive me to the pub on a Friday night. So what are some of the misconceptions around the GDLs that you've seen?
Well, that example that you gave there about my son driving me to the pub, what the graduated driving licence is, when we say that about the passenger safety precautions, not carrying passengers, it's peer age passengers we're talking about. A newly qualified driver is absolutely fine to drive solo or with an older, experienced driver in the car. What we are concerned about is say teenagers carrying teenagers as passengers. So that is one misconception, is that you're fine to travel around with your parents in the car. The other misconception is that I've heard as well, that's been said many times, is people say, well, what if I'm 20 and I've got a child? And again, it's not about carrying your children in the car. That is your own choice, kind of thing. If you want to put your children in the car with you, what we are talking about is peer age passengers. So I hope that people once listening to me understand that. I mean, as I say, if it was ever brought in as you couldn't carry any passengers in the car, there would be exemptions that if you needed to carry a younger person, there would be exemptions to help you through those times. But as well, it's only for period of time, a limited amount of time. That's another misconception as well. I've heard people say that, so from 17 to 25, I can't carry a passenger. And that's not what it's about either. It's if you pass your test, say 18, like Caitlin's friend did, for 6 months up to a year maybe, you wouldn't be able to carry your peer age passengers in the car. It's not about you can't carry passengers for years on end. When we talk about young drivers, it's just that the government call young drivers 17 to 24-year-olds. It doesn't mean that it's from 17 to 24 you can't carry a passenger. So I hope I've made that part of it clear.
I think so. And I think the key word used there is exemptions, because the other sort of stumbling block I hear people raising a lot is, one of the things on the license maybe that you can't drive at a certain time of night. And then you hear people saying, well, what if I've got a job, or, this kind of stuff. But again, it's like you said, exemptions. It's that license isn't there to stop people working, is it? It's there to keep people safe. So I think that, I'm going to ask you this: what would you say to those people, whether it's the young learners that are, worried that they won't be able to do what they want to do when they've passed the test, or whether it's the parents of them that are having that same approach and not seeing the danger? What would you say to those people that are against a graduated driving license?
Well, the thing is that the countries that have this law in place, they all work around it, and it's proven to save lives for since the mid 1980s. It's been law in other countries, and it's worked in them countries. They haven't come across any problems with, say, nighttime working or anything like that. Hopefully, in those 6 to 12 months, when them safety precautions are in place, maybe your parents could pick you up from work, or as I say, you could have an exemption. But we do know that driving like late at night, I've got a statistic here that driving between the hours of 2 and 4 a.m. in the morning increases the risk of crashing by 8 times. So I'm sure that those few months of those precautions in place, surely that should change your mind.
And do you know what? It's the statistics that get me. I've said this on the podcast before, but the one that hooked me in was, 5 people a day died in the UK on UK roads. Hearing that, it's like, how do we accept that? Like you mentioned before, it's the biggest killer in young people, but just that number, even if we look on the grand scales, how can we accept 5 a day? And I look at the other one, which is 1 in 5 people crash within a year after passing the driving test. And for me, as a driving instructor, now I don't work, full hours at the minute because I do some of this stuff, but so I have probably 10 passes a year. Well, I'm not willing to accept 2 of them are going to crash after the test.
No.
So that's why I think this message that you're getting across is really important, because not every instructor is going to be aware of this. And also a lot of people don't have instructors, they have with their parents. So, we kind of touched on this before, but how important is it that graduate license isn't in place at the minute? We don't know if it's going to come in place at any point in the near future, even though we're campaigning for it. So how important is it that we as a whole, the road safety sector, yourself, driving instructors, keep banging the drum for this message?
I think it's really important, because we also know that with every extra same age passenger, that newly qualified drivers are 4 times more likely to crash with passengers in. So I just feel it's really important that we get that message out there to teenagers. And as I say, I am now in touch with families, and few of them, their child, a 17, 18-year-old child, has been killed as a passenger, say 2 days after their friend who's driving has passed the test. And that is just so sad. There's one girl that I know of that was killed the day after her friend had passed his test. Somebody got in touch recently with me and said it was 2 days after. Their child was killed 2 days after as a passenger in a newly qualified driver's car. And that is just not acceptable this day and age, surely.
And you've been, we touched on this before actually, that you weren't campaigning for this before 2017 because you weren't aware of it. And that's why I think it's important, because you are making more people aware of it. You have probably saved lives. Not necessarily knowing that. There'll be people that have seen your campaign that have gone, oh, I'm holding back a bit here, whether it's the driver or whether it's the parents or whatever. So it's why I think it's such a good thing. And I know there was one other thing you wanted to mention in particular, which was the forget-me-not families. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, as you say, I've been campaigning since after Caitlin Binquest. So it was 2018. The first year I wasn't fit enough to do anything that year. I was in such deep grief. But then once I got stronger, and started campaigning, and now it's kind of a full-time job for me, kind of thing. And I've just found that campaigning on my own is a very lonely place, actually. And I've been let down so many times with meetings with road safety ministers. It takes a long time to arrange a meeting with a road safety minister, and lots of preparations put in place. And twice it's happened to me the day before I've been to meet a road safety minister, the meeting's been cancelled. And so I came up with this idea months ago that, I have meetings with all the researchers, and I have another 2 families that join, bereaved families that join the meetings as well. And I just thought we should get more of us, because I keep reading online and hearing on the news about young people killed in crashes, similar circumstances, to Caitlin and her friend, and thought it would be great if we just got all of us together to campaign rather than us all individually campaigning. And so what I've been doing is reaching out through Break and Road Peace and other bereaved parents have been letting me know about people as well. And so we've got a little group of families together. And we've got approximately about 20 now that have all lost a child as a passenger, or a few of them that their child's been the driver, and they feel it's been through an inexperience, that the crash has happened and they've been killed in it. And so I think all of us together, we can support each other with our campaigning. And I decided that we needed a name for the group. So I decided on the Forget Me Not families. And I asked all the families first what they thought, what their ideas were. And we all kind of went for the Forget Me Not families. So we decided it would be the Forget Me Not families uniting, because we're all uniting as a group together, calling for these safety precautions. And one of the reasons that I used the Forget Me Not was because I feel that young people killed in crashes are forgotten about by the government. I've been campaigning for 6 years, and I've now been in touch with families that have been campaigning since 1986. They campaigned after their son was killed in a road traffic collision as a passenger, and all 5 boys in the car were killed. And I just think, that is terrible to think that all them years we've been pleading with the government, please help and save young lives on our road, and they haven't put anything in place, safety precautions to help reduce these crashes when they've had all the evidence given to them. They know that graduated driving licence works in other countries. Why wouldn't it work in our country? And so that's where the Forget Me Not came from, because I felt that our children are forgotten, kind of thing. And also the other reason was that I read about Princess of Wales, Lady Diana. Her favourite flower was the Forget Me Not. And of course, she was killed in a road traffic collision, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And so that was how we came up with that name. And as I said, I did ask the other family members as well, and they all agreed on it. So, and what I'd like to do is get even more families to come forward, and they can reach out to me through Break and Road Peace. That they will be supported through this, and we can all support each other with our campaigning.
Well, hopefully we can find a few more through this podcast, and there'll be links everything in the show notes for people to find you and contact you. But I think that's a lovely idea. I do want to touch back on one thing you said. Now, I don't necessarily expect you to comment on this. This might be my place to have a dig at someone. But yeah, like you said, we've been campaigning for that long, but we've got a government, whether it's this one or previous incarnations, that are unwilling to do anything because it's not going to win political votes. And it's the votes are put above the lives of people. We have accepted in this country that it's acceptable for 1,700 people to die a year. And I think that is abysmal when you think of it like that. But it's true. I also think it's really telling that you've been full of praise for a lot of people today. Whether it's Road Peace or Liz Box or Brick, full of praise for a lot of people. The only person you've said anything kind of negative about, again, is when it comes to the government, and you've not been critical necessarily, but they're the ones that have caused you strife. And yeah, I think that's really telling. But I don't want to dwell on that too much. I want to bring it back to Caitlin's campaign, because what's the goal? What's the end goal?
The goal is that through this horrific thing that has happened in our family, that something positive can come out of the horrific death of Caitlin. That me finding out that Caitlin wouldn't have been killed if we'd had this law. I hope that through her name and through our group of families all coming together, that we can stop this happening. to younger people on the roads. All we're wanting to do is save lives, and I do get upset when graduated driving license is reported on negatively because it does save lives. It does save lives. And people say, oh, it's restricting young drivers. No, it's not. The people that are restricted, like my daughter, Caitlin, she's in a churchyard now. She's buried in our local churchyard, 18 years old. She's the one that's restricted. What we're trying to do is protect our younger generation so that they have a future, so that they have a life. We have safety precautions in every other aspect of life, in our workplaces. We vaccinate our children when they're babies to protect them from diseases, and that's proven to save their lives. All my children have had their vaccinations to keep them safe. We educate our children, sending them to school from just after 4 years old. We educate them up until the age of 18. But at the age of 17, when by law they're still classed as a minor, by law, we give them a car key the day after they pass the test, and they can potentially go out and fill that car with all their friends and kill a car full of friends. And that isn't that 17-year-old's fault. That's the law. They're allowed to do that. And we know through research that the brain isn't fully developed, and we're letting our younger generation down by not putting these safety precautions in place, I feel. I've protected Caitlin all through her life, as I say, educating her, vaccinating her physiotherapy for her disability that she had. And then all she did was get in a car with somebody that was inexperienced, and that was it. Our family, it's like somebody's said before, somebody's like thrown a grenade in my living room and my family's just shattered. No, nothing will ever be the same. Nothing will be the same without Caitlin being here. It's every Christmas. It's heartbreaking to wake up that day. It's heartbreaking the lead up to Christmas that I can't go out and buy her presents. Her birthdays, all them special dates through the year, that she's not here for. And seeing her other friends grow up as well, it's in my head, Caitlin will always be 18. And I'm now seeing her friends at age 25 buying their houses, and I don't think you don't realise the devastation it causes. I didn't realise that first shopping trip when I did eventually venture out the house to go shopping. It stops you down the shopping aisle because I see what I would normally have reached out for to buy for Caitlin, and I can't do it. And that was something that really hit me, that I didn't think about them things beforehand. As I said, you do unfortunately think that happens to other people. That will never happen to us. And that's not true. It can happen to anybody.
Well, there may not be the political will there, but there's definitely will there from you and others, and I believe you're making a difference. And after speaking for you today in particular, I think you're going to make a bigger difference. The other thing I will say is that you spoke about the different communities almost you've got around you supporting you. I think you've after today you'll have the driving instructor community on your side as well. So another bunch of people supporting you. Is there anything else that you specifically want to touch on or get across today?
As I say, I would just like to raise awareness to parents that, if you've got teenagers and they say, oh, my friend's passed, we're going to go out, just say to them, I really don't think you should. I don't think so yet. Wait till they're a little bit more experienced, or teenagers that have passed the test. I'd like to get that message out to them as well. Please don't, on the day you pass your test, go and fill your car full of all your friends. I know that's what a lot of people do, but I hope through Caitlin's story and Caitlin's campaign that it does put that seed of thought, that thought in your head that, no, maybe we shouldn't do that, because all that research has proven that it's dangerous to do that. You know, I think that's the main message I would like to get out is I wished I'd known what I know now. I wish somebody had said to me, do you know that it's that is one of the main causes of death, car crashes? Do you know that it's rural roads that are the dangerous roads to young drivers? And I definitely would have taken notice. I definitely would have said, I don't think I want you to go in that car tonight, Caitlin. And that's no disrespect to the driver at all. She was a sensible, lovely girl. It's just, not safe to.
Yeah. And do you have a message for driving instructors? Because, is this something that you would like to see us getting across to our learners, or potentially even to the parents of the learners, or what we can be talking about on social media? Is there anything you want, a message for us, anything we can do?
Yeah, I think what it is as well, that I know that I have spoken to a driving instructor, and I did do a speech one night to some driving instructors in Carlisle. And I spoke about the Caitlin's message that we produced for the First Car magazine, which is handed out to teenagers after they pass the test. And they were all really supportive of my campaign. But one thing that they did say was that they do sometimes feel a bit of pressure, that youngsters want to pass their test quickly. And so I just think to driving instructors, we know that what I've been talking about is graduated driving licenses after they pass the test, but there is also the pre-passing the test, which can be part of a graduated driving license as well. And that's making sure that they get up to 40 hours on-road experience, and about a logbook as well of, that they're covering all driving in different weather situations, and also driving on different roads, rural roads, urban roads. I think that would be my message to driving instructors, is to make sure, feel a bit cheeky saying that to a driving instructor, but that would be my advice. Do you know what I mean? Make sure that they get that 40 hours practice. I mean, that is in Australia. Liz Box has told me that it's up to 120 hours that they have to do before they can be put in for their test. So I think that would be my message to driving instructors. But as I say, when I went and spoke to them that evening, they were all very supportive, very supportive.
Yeah. I mean, you don't need to feel cheeky about saying that. I've said a lot worse on it, don't worry. But I had completely forgotten, all my hands up, I'd completely forgotten that part of that graduated driving license incorporates the learning to drive, and I'd forgotten that there were things like hours and stuff like that included in there. And
Yeah.
I think that's what we can do. We can't force people to have 40, 60, 120 hours. What we can do is we can encourage it. This is something I've been banging on about for ages. We can talk about this stuff on social media. We can make this the norm. We don't have to wait. We can campaign for the government, but we don't have to wait for the government to make the change. We can talk about that. Like, this is normal, as you said, with the log. Have you driven in the dark? Have you driven down rural roads? Have you, driven in the rain? Now, all right, you can't always enforce a rain lesson, but you can do as much as you can, and we can have the discussions where we can. So I think that's a really, really valid and strong point, and it's something I've been championing for a while. So just because that graduate license isn't in place doesn't mean we can't put parts of it into action. So yeah, I like that a lot. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, do you know what? I just want to say thank you for joining me. I want to take a moment to thank you for what you're doing. I think I don't know if I would have the strength and the passion that you have. And yeah, big thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, Sharon.
Oh, thank you. That's really lovely of you. Yeah. I think my passion comes from, because I think any mother would do this for their child. Do you know what I mean? There's no love like a mother's love, is what they say.
Yes. You say that, I know my mum will do it for me, so I get that. But no, as I've mentioned before, there will be links and things for people to find you and find the Forget Me Not families. People can find it in the show notes on the website and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, big thank you for joining me today. It's very much appreciated.
Oh, thank you, Terry. Thanks a lot.
So a big thank you to Sharon for joining me on the podcast there. It was a really powerful episode, I thought, and an important one. But Sharon has since been in touch. There was one statistic she wanted to get across, but didn't on this episode. So she asked if I could drop it in. So happy to do that. She wanted to get across that 24% of people killed or seriously injured on Britain's roads are in a collision with young drivers. So drivers aged 17 to 24. Even though this age group makes up for only 7% of the total driving population. And I think that's a really important statistic. We've mentioned it on the show before, but it just highlights how big of an impact this is for young drivers and just highlights the need for us to do our job properly and as effectively as we can. So, yeah, big thank you to Sharon again. And I hope you guys took from it what I did. And as I mentioned in previous episodes, one of the things I am going to be doing is taking some clips from these episodes and creating some little 5 to 10 minute podcasts that are more suitable to share with learners or the general public. So keep your eye out for those coming up. They'll be out over the next few weeks, and you can probably find them by following me on social media. Follow the Instructor Podcast on the WhatsApp channel. That's where I share all the kind of short links and quick bite-sized chunks of stuff. Even the occasional voice note, which don't let that put you off too much. And then sign up to the Instructor Podcast newsletter, because over there, that's where I put out the more in-depth stuff. And again, share the links and stuff over there as well. So loads of ways to follow the instructor and get access to these resources, as well as in the show notes, on the website, all that kind of stuff. So loads of ways for you to follow the Instructor Podcast. And of course, you can follow on the Instructor Podcast Premium. You know, if you enjoy these shows and you want to help with the running costs, sign up for £2 a month. You don't get anything for that other than helping with the running costs of the show, and that's very much appreciated. Or you could sign up for a £10 or £22 tier, and you get access to a whole host of content. We've even got a week's free trial on the £10 tier. So you could sign up for a week's free trial, and if after that week you decide that it's not for you, you could cancel. Or if you've worked through all 75 hours worth of exclusive content and then you're like, right, I'm done now, you could cancel as well. They're both plausible options. I'd rather you stayed, but they're both plausible options. Yeah, so check that out, www.theinstructorpodcast.com. And also want to give a shout out again to Bright Coaching, and in particular Stuart Lockyer, who have opted to sponsor season 7. I'm supremely chuffed to have them on board for this season. Stuart is someone that's bringing a whole wealth of new ideas and incorporating old ideas into what he's doing at Bright Coaching. And Bright Coaching is one of the most exciting products in our industry at the moment, and not just their professional diploma, but all the other stuff going on around it as well. Like I said, incorporating everything rather than focusing on a standards check, I think is something I heavily believe in, heavily endorse. So go and check out Bright Coaching at www.brightcoaching.net. And again, big thank you to them for sponsoring the show. And all that's left for me to say today is, let's just keep raising standards.
The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.